billionaire CEO, gave his black card to test his poor assistant, but she bought the unthinkable, and he was speechless. She thought it was just a test. He handed her his black card in front of the entire boardroom, daring her to buy anything she wanted. But what she chose wasn't luxury, wasn't revenge. It was something so pure, so unthinkably simple, that it left the billionaire CEO absolutely speechless. And it was just the beginning, because what started as a game of power would end in a war for dignity, reputation, and love. Before we continue, if you enjoy touching and inspiring stories like this one, make sure to subscribe to the channel and leave a like. Now, let's get back to the story. The room went quiet the moment he said it. "I'm serious, Elena. Anything you want," Adrian Cross said, flipping his black Amex card across the long oak conference table like it was nothing more than a poker chip. Elena caught it on reflex, her slender fingers trembling slightly. Around them, the senior executives, all perfectly polished in their arrogance, shifted in their seats, watching like this was the start of some twisted game. In truth, it was. "You've earned it," Adrian added with a sly tilt of his head, his cool gaze locking onto hers. "Go buy something, no limit, just surprise me." Her mouth parted, confused. The card felt heavier than it should have, like holding a grenade with a smiling pin. She glanced at him. Was this a joke, a trap, or some kind of test? From the far side of the room, Ms. Lillian Hart, VP of Operations and the unofficial Queen Bee of Cross International, chuckled under her breath, loud enough for everyone to hear. "Let's see how expensive gratitude really is." Elena's cheeks burned. Her fingers gripped the card a little tighter, almost wishing it would crack. But she stood straight, nodded once, politely like a good assistant, and walked out of the room with the eyes of the wealthy and heartless burning holes through her back. The day had started like any other. Too many coffee orders, not enough elevators, and a missed bus that forced Elena to jog 10 blocks in shoes with soles thinner than her paycheck. She didn't mind, not really. The job paid just enough to help her mom with rent and keep the lights on at home. Besides, working for Adrian Cross, billionaire CEO of one of the most powerful investment firms on the East Coast, was a rare opportunity, even if most days it felt like standing outside a glass castle with a mop in hand. Still, she was grateful. Dignity had become her quiet rebellion. At exactly 9:03 a.m., she entered the 44th floor conference room, coffee tray in hand. The door had barely shut when Adrian asked her to stay. That's when everything shifted. Elena stood frozen under the city's morning glare, the black card still in her hand. Anything she wanted? It wasn't kindness, not really. It was power, displayed in front of people who thought she didn't belong. She could already imagine what they expected her to do. Rush off to Fifth Avenue, buy designer heels or a diamond necklace, maybe post it online like a hungry Cinderella drunk on privilege. But they didn't know her. She glanced down at the worn family ring on her right hand. Silver, engraved with a date only she and her late grandmother remembered, June 12, 1984. The day her grandmother opened a small neighborhood bookstore, the same one now buried under debt and unpaid taxes after her passing. Elena looked up at the city around her. It buzzed with ambition, masks, and champagne-fueled dreams. She turned left, away from Fifth Avenue. She knew exactly what to buy. "She's been gone a while," someone muttered in the boardroom. Adrian barely looked up from his screen, but the smirk tugging at the corner of his lips hadn't moved since Elena left. "She's probably buying the whole shoe department." Ms. Hart leaned in, stirring her tea with exaggerated grace. "You really think she'll come back?" Adrian didn't answer. In truth, he wasn't sure. He hadn't expected Elena Morgan to last more than a month when HR assigned her to his office 6 months ago. Fresh out of grad school, soft-spoken, all was in the background. She looked like someone who cried after long days and apologized too much. But she didn't cry, and she didn't apologize. Not once. Not even when someone accidentally spilled espresso in her report or when Lillian Hart sent her to retrieve office supplies in a blizzard. She simply showed up, on time, every day. No fuss, no drama. Adrian noticed. He just never said anything. Not until this morning, when he decided to test her, or tempt her. Or maybe both. 2 hours later, Eleanor returned, wind-swept, flushed from walking, and holding a single medium-sized brown bag with white tissue poking from the top. She didn't smile, didn't speak, just walked straight into his office and placed the bag on his desk. "That's it?" Adrian asked, raising an eyebrow. "That's it." He opened the bag. Inside was a vintage 1920s copy of The Velveteen Rabbit, an early printing, carefully wrapped, clearly aged, and early printing, worth far more than its worn cover suggested. Beneath it was a small white envelope. Adrian opened it. Inside was a folded receipt and a check. Her check. "You reimbursed part of the purchase?" he asked, stunned. "I only used what I couldn't afford," she said gently. "The rest was mine." Adrian stared at the book. The inscription inside read, "To the one who made me real. Love, Nana." Something twisted quietly in his chest. Lillian Hart walked by the open door just then, heels clicking like judgment. "I told you," she whispered with a scoff. "Sentimental. Predictable." But Eleanor turned. For the first time in 6 months, she looked Lillian dead in the eye and smiled. "I'm sure you would have bought a mirror." The room went still. Adrian actually chuckled, a soft, genuine sound no one had heard in weeks. Elena turned to leave. "I didn't expect this," Adrian called out. She paused. "You said you wanted to be surprised," she said. And then added, "You were." And with that, she walked away, back to her desk, back to her world, as Adrian stood in his silent office, still holding a book about what makes things real. At 4:46 p.m., as the city blurred into early twilight, a new email pinged across the company server. It landed at the top of Adrian's inbox, with a thud that felt heavier than its bites. Subject, urgent, internal audit discrepancy, Elena Morgan. And just like that, the game changed. The air in the office felt thinner by the time Elena reached her desk. She didn't notice the extra stairs at first, the way heads lifted slightly when she passed, or how the hum of conversation quieted just a little too fast. She set her bag down, took a sip from her now cold coffee, and began typing out the minutes from the morning meeting. Across the open floor, someone whispered her name, then another. A woman in marketing tilted her screen slightly so her coworker could read something. Eyes darted over cubicle walls like meerkats sensing trouble. Elena glanced around, sensing the static in the air, but still unaware of the storm building behind the scenes. Adrian hadn't opened the email, not fully. It sat there on his screen like a snake under glass. Subject, urgent, internal audit discrepancy, Elena Morgan, from Compliance Division, Cross International, flagged attachment. Statement review, Q3 expense analysis. He clicked it open, but didn't scroll, not yet. For a man who could make billion-dollar decisions before breakfast, Adrian Cross suddenly felt a weight in his chest that made the act of reading one email feel like a betrayal. There was no way she would have done anything wrong. Not after this morning, not after the check, not after that book. Still, the timing was too sharp, too intentional, and someone wanted him to see it. 2 floors down, in the finance department, Stanley Bell was sweating through his 3rd cup of chamomile tea and regretting every decision that led him to this moment. He hadn't meant for Elena to be flagged. The system had caught the discrepancy automatically, something about a vendor charge linked to her employee code from a department she didn't work in, a catering invoice from 3 weeks ago, $3,287, corporate card. But she didn't even have a corporate card. He'd brought it to Lillian that morning, quietly, just like protocol demanded. She'd smiled too easily. "I'll escalate it," she said, already reaching for her tablet. "Leave it with me." And now the email was flying through the company like gossip in a church pew. Stanley took off his glasses and rubbed his face. "She doesn't deserve this," he muttered, to no one. Elena sat at her desk, carefully lining up the corners of her spreadsheet when she noticed the silence had thickened. Her screen blinked. A new email. Meeting request. Urgent. Elena Morgan, 4:55 p.m. Location. Legal conference room B from HR admin. She blinked. A slow, creeping chill crawled up her spine. The email had no context, no reason, no details, just a time, a room, and her name. And everyone knew what legal B meant. A few desks away, Rachel, a junior analyst with too much eyeliner and not enough empathy, tried to stifle a grin. Elena closed her laptop and stood up slowly, her legs stiff with something she didn't want to name. Adrian stepped into the hallway just as she passed. "Elena," he called. She turned, startled. "Yes?" He paused, looked down the hallway. People were watching. "Come to my office now." She followed silently. The moment the door shut behind her, behind. Adrian didn't waste time. "Did you receive an email from HR?" She nodded. "About 5 minutes ago. No explanation." He leaned against the desk, arms crossed. "They're accusing you of misusing a corporate account, something to do with catering expenses last quarter." Her mouth opened, then closed again. Closed. "I don't even have a corporate account," she said, voice low. "Why would I?" "I know," he said, cutting her off gently. That surprised her. "I know you wouldn't," he added, "but someone's using this. Maybe to retaliate, maybe to remove you." Elena's lips parted again. "Remove me?" Adrian nodded once. "And let me guess," she said softly. "You think it's Lillian Hart?" He didn't answer. He didn't have to. They sat in silence for a few seconds, long enough to hear the city outside, to feel the weight of the storm that had nothing to do with weather. Then, as if nothing had happened, Elena gave a small, helpless laugh. "Can I be honest with you, Mr. Cross?" He looked up. "I'm not afraid of being fired. I'm afraid of being humiliated." There was no bitterness in her voice, just truth, just dignity. Adrian stared at her for a long second, then reached into the desk drawer and slid something across to her. It was the Velveteen Rabbit. "You left it behind," he said. She blinked. "I didn't mean to." "I know." His voice was quiet now. "But I don't think it's done with you yet." The clock hit 4:53 p.m. Elena stood at the glass door of conference room B, hands at her sides, shoulders straight. Inside, 2 HR reps were waiting. One looked apologetic. The other looked bored. Lillian Hart was seated at the end of the table with her tablet already open and a smirk playing on her lips. "I'll just get straight to the point," she began the moment Elena entered. "There's been an expense flagged under your employee code, and it doesn't match your role. Catering services, luxury tier, unauthorized signature." Elena didn't flinch. "That's impossible." "Then you'll be happy to clear it up quickly." They slid a printout across the table. Elena scanned the document, her name, her code, a company she'd never heard of, and a signature, a messy but trying to mimic hers. Her eyes narrowed. "That's not my handwriting." Lillian tilted her head. "Unfortunately, the system shows the charge came through your login credentials. Until that's resolved, you'll be placed on leave." Elena's pulse roared in her ears. "I haven't done anything wrong." "You'll have a chance to prove that," Lillian said. Too smoothly. In time. Outside the room, Adrian stood beside the HR director, arms folded tightly. "She's not going on leave," he said flatly. "Mr. Cross," the woman began. "I'll handle it personally," he added, not raising his voice, but somehow it echoed anyway. Inside the glass walls, Elena finally noticed him standing there. Their eyes met, and for the first time, he looked furious. Adrian stood outside the conference room like a wall no one had expected. The moment Lillian Hart saw him, her entire posture changed. She closed the tablet with a snap and leaned back in her chair like a queen inconvenienced. "Mr. Cross," she said coolly, "this is an HR-led inquiry. Perhaps it would be best to allow the process to—" "No," Adrian said. Not loud, not aggressive, just final. "Elena isn't going anywhere." Lillian's smile tightened. "With all due respect, I said I'll handle it," he repeated. Then his eyes shifted to Elena, and something in his voice softened just enough. "You, with me." Elena stood, not rushed, not shaken. She gathered the papers with quiet hands, nodded at the stunned HR reps, and walked out without another word. The hallway closed around them. For a second, neither spoke. Then Adrian said, "I've seen enough." In his office, the city behind them was beginning to glow with evening lights. Adrian handed her a cup of coffee. From the good machine, not the communal one outside the elevator. It felt strange, sitting across from him like this, not as an assistant, but as something closer to an equal. Elena wrapped her fingers around the warm ceramic. "You shouldn't have done that." "I couldn't not." Her eyes searched his, unsure what to say to a billionaire CEO who had just defied protocol for someone like her. Then, gently, she asked, "Do you think I forged it?" "No," he said instantly. "How can you be so sure?" He gave her a long look. "Because anyone who spends their one chance with my black card on a worn-out children's book isn't the type to steal $3,000 on catered shrimp and linen napkins." A small laugh slipped out of her, surprised and involuntary. "I thought you didn't read people," she said. "I usually don't," he admitted. "But you're not hard to read." That silenced her again. Not because she disagreed, but because maybe, for the first time, she didn't feel invisible. Later that night, Elena returned to her tiny apartment, one bedroom above a laundromat that always smelled faintly of dryer sheets and burnt toast. Her mother was already asleep on the pull-out couch, a stack of bills next to her, like bedtime stories that refused to end. Elena sat quietly at the kitchen table, opened her laptop, and typed a single name into the search bar. Brantford Catering. Q3 vendors, nothing. No website, no reviews, no listed address. No. Her fingers hovered over the keys, thinking. Then she reached for her bag, pulled out the velveteen rabbit, and opened to the inscription again. "To the one who made me real. Love, Nana." She traced the words with her fingertip, and for the first time since the meeting, her throat tightened. She whispered into the silence, "Nana, what do I do now?" The book didn't answer, but something in her heart did. The next morning, Adrian showed up before half the staff. His office light was already on when Elena stepped off the elevator. He looked up as she walked in, holding a brown paper bag with 2 foil-wrapped egg sandwiches and 2 small coffees. "No black card necessary," she said, placing the bag on the edge of his desk. He smiled, not his usual guarded smirk, but something real. "Egg and cheese. And hot sauce. I remember." He reached for the bag, their fingers brushed. For one strange, quiet second, everything else faded, the noise of the company, the whispering halls, the eyes that judged. It was just the two of them, the CEO and the assistant, and something unspoken between them. Adrian cleared his throat and opened his laptop. "I spent half the night reviewing expense logs," he said. "Whoever approved that Brantford catering charge, it wasn't you. But the approval chain was manipulated. Someone cloned your login. Can you trace it?" He nodded. "Already flagged IT." Elena sat across from him. "You think it's Lillian?" "I think she's not half as clever as she believes." Adrian leaned forward. "You're not alone in this, Elena, not anymore." At 10:13 a.m., an alert pinged across Adrian's screen. "Trace complete. Login origin. Terminal 7B. Executive Suite Lounge access." Elena leaned over. "That's Lillian's assistant station, right?" "Not anymore," Adrian said, already standing. 15 minutes later, the building security team escorted a nervous young man, one of Lillian's temps, into a small conference room for questioning. By noon, the truth was out. The assistant had taken a bribe, offered access. Lillian's signature wasn't digital, it was verbal, off the record, off the books. But someone else had been watching too. Stanley Bell from Finance, still guilt-ridden, had quietly forwarded a copy of the expense audit trail to the Internal Ethics Board. Just in case. The whole building buzzed with the scent of scandal. At 3:42 p.m., Adrian stepped into the main office floor and made his way to Elena's desk, very publicly. The room quieted as he stopped in front of her. "Elena," he said, "can I speak with you?" Her heart stuttered. He led her to the central presentation room, already filled with a small crowd of key staff, the general counsel, the VP of HR Stanley, even the receptionist, who clearly didn't know why she was there. Adrian faced them all. Earlier this week, an expense report was flagged under Ms. Morgan's name. It has since come to light that her identity was used without her consent. He looked directly at Lillian Hart, who was standing near the back with her arms folded and her mouth tight. "The matter has been resolved," he continued, "and Ms. Morgan has been cleared of any wrongdoing." There was a pause, then, surprisingly, a few claps from Stanley, from HR, even from someone in accounting. Elena stood still, her face calm but her chest full of something she hadn't felt in years, relief. And then Adrian said, loud and clear, "As of today, Elena Morgan has been promoted to Executive Coordinator. She will report directly to me." Lillian stepped forward, voice sharp. "You can't just appoint—" "Yes," Adrian said flatly. "I can." And when his eyes met Elena's again, they didn't look like CEO to assistant anymore. They looked like something else entirely. The news spread faster than the coffee carts could refill. By the end of the day, everyone on the 44th floor knew. Elena Morgan, the assistant with scuffed shoes and old cardigans, had been promoted, hand-picked by Adrian Cross himself. No job posting, no interviews, just named. The whispers came in waves, some congratulatory, some resentful, others laced with confusion, as if they couldn't quite compute how someone like her had risen without the usual ladder climbing and wine glass clinking. Elena didn't celebrate, not openly. She returned to her desk, packed up her minimal belongings, mostly notebooks, one ceramic mug with a chipped handle, and a small photo of her mother, and moved into the adjoining office beside Adrian's. No nameplate yet, no ceremony, just a key card and a desk with a view she wasn't used to. And a copy of the Velveteen Rabbit sitting quietly in the center. That evening, after most of the staff had cleared out, Adrian passed by her open door. "You haven't left?" "I'm not sure I know how," she said with a faint smile. He stepped inside, hands in his pockets. "You've had quite a day." "I still feel like someone's going to tap me on the shoulder and ask me to go back to the mailroom." He leaned against the doorway, studying her. "You're not like them," he said. She blinked. "Them?" He gestured loosely. "The ones who orbit power just to feel important. You've never done that." She didn't reply right away. Then, softly, "I never wanted to be important to everyone, just useful, honest, enough." That stopped him for a second. He looked at her, really looked, at the tired, kind eyes, the way she smoothed the edge of her sleeve when she was nervous, the stubborn grace she wore like armor. "You are," he said, "more than enough." The next morning the weather turned. Gray skies and the kind of wind that made umbrellas instantly regret their existence. Elena arrived early, as usual. She brought coffee, real coffee, and 2 still warm blueberry muffins from the corner bakery. "I thought we could actually eat breakfast," she said, placing the small bag on Adrian's desk. He looked up from his screen, surprised. "You didn't have to." "I know, that's why I did." He smiled, and it wasn't polished or rehearsed. It was real, just like the steam rising between them. They sat by the window, overlooking the city. 2 paper cups, 2 muffins, no titles, no tension. Just a quiet pause in a life that rarely allowed them. As the week went on, the noise around Elena's promotion softened. Lillian Hart, facing her own quiet investigation, began working from home. Medical leave, the memo said. No one believed it. In her absence, the tone of the office changed, just a little. Adrian's staff meetings got shorter. The hallway laughter became less nervous. Even the interns started making eye contact. Elena, meanwhile, adapted. She coordinated meetings with precision, handled client prep without error, and never once mentioned the word promotion to anyone. Still, she caught the glances, especially from Adrian, and especially when he thought she wasn't looking. One night, she stayed late to prep a quarterly report he'd asked for. The office was dark except for the glow from her screen. Adrian appeared in the doorway, tie loosened, jacket draped over one shoulder. "You're still here?" She nodded. "I'm almost done." He stepped inside, set his jacket on the back of the chair across from her. "You didn't have to stay." "I know, that's why I did." He paused, then smiled. "That line's becoming your signature." Elena leaned back, stretching her neck. "Well, some of us aren't billionaires with 12 assistants." "I only have one now," he said, watching her carefully. She raised an eyebrow. "I mean that," he added. "I don't want 10 people managing my life. I'd rather have one who understands it." Her heart thudded once, hard and stupid. "I'm not sure I understand your life," she said softly. "You understand people. That's harder." The silence between them shifted, warmer now, almost fragile. She looked away before it stayed too long. "I should finish this," he nodded. "I'll walk you out when you're done." The next day, while organizing documents in the storage room, Elena found a folder misfiled behind a stack of inactive contracts. At first it looked unimportant, just old vendor receipts from 5 years ago. But then she saw it. Branford Catering, the same vendor tied to her audit. Except here, in the old document, it had a different logo, a different signature, and a different contact name. The folder hadn't been touched in years, which meant someone had revived an inactive vendor to use in the fraud. She tucked it under her arm and headed upstairs, her pulse racing. Adrian was in a meeting with 2 board members, but when she knocked, he excused himself instantly. In his office, she laid the folder on his desk. "I think this proves someone reopened a closed vendor account under my name. Look." He flipped through the documents, his brow furrowed. This is good, Elena. This is very good." She hesitated. "Why would someone go to this much trouble just to frame me?" He closed the folder. "Because they saw something in you before I did." She blinked. He stepped closer, and they were afraid of what I might see next. Outside, the wind howled against the glass. Inside, their eyes held a little longer. But just as Adrian reached for the folder again, his office line buzzed. He answered. His expression changed. Then he looked at Elena. "You're going to want to hear this." He put the call on speaker. A familiar voice crackled through the line. "This is HR," the woman said. "We've had an anonymous tip about Lillian Hart's communications history, and there's something you're both going to want to see." The voice on speaker belonged to Marissa from HR, a woman Elena had barely spoken to before the audit, but who now sounded out of breath with urgency. "I don't have all the details yet," Marissa continued, "but someone slipped an unmarked envelope under my door this morning. No return name. Inside was a USB drive and a printed email chain between Lillian and a third-party vendor." Adrian and Elena locked eyes. "Third party?" Adrian asked. "Yes. It looks like a catering company, possibly the same one from Elena's expense report. The tone is informal. There are negotiations, references to off-book incentives. We're checking the IP metadata now." Elena stepped closer to the desk. "Was my name mentioned?" Only once, Marissa replied. In a message that said, if it goes wrong, she's quiet. She won't fight. Silence flooded the room. Adrian's jaw tightened. He ended the call with a clipped thank you and looked up. She picked you because she thought you'd take the fall and disappear. She was half right, Elena murmured. I did want to disappear. Adrian stood. That's not happening. Not now. Not ever. For the rest of the morning, they worked side by side in Adrian's office. Elena scanned email logs and metadata while Adrian reviewed the vendor contracts Lillian had signed over the years. Each file felt like peeling back another layer of rot beneath polished surfaces. But it wasn't just the investigation that held Elena's mind. Every so often, she caught Adrian watching her, not in the commanding, unreadable way he used with the board, but differently, quietly, like he was cataloging the way she brushed her hair behind her ear or bit her lip when she concentrated. It unnerved her. It also made her heart flutter in a way that didn't feel safe. Not in this office, not with this man, not after everything. Still, she didn't look away when their eyes met. Later, they took a short break in the quiet lounge on the executive floor, a room almost no one used except during investor visits. Adrian brought 2 small plates of fruit and cheese from the fridge. Elena smiled, surprised. No private chef this time? He handed her a plate. I figured we should eat something that didn't come from a menu with leather binding. They sat on the velvet couch beneath the tall windows. Outside, clouds drifted slowly over the skyline. Inside, something warm lingered between them, the kind of calm that only comes when truth starts winning. She glanced at him. Do you ever regret it? She asked. Regret what? Building this, the power, the name, Cross International. He thought about it. No, he said, but I regret how long it took me to question it. She nodded slowly. People forget that behind names and suits, there are still hearts, flawed ones. Adrian turned toward her. You've never tried to impress me, not once. I didn't think it would work, she said honestly. He laughed. A quiet, warm sound. You were right. That afternoon, Marissa from HR sent over the full contents of the USB drive. Adrian printed the email chain and spread the pages across his desk. Some were redacted, but the patterns were clear. Lillian had forged Elena's signature, reactivated a dormant vendor under false credentials, and initiated a pattern of manipulated charges. It had taken months, which meant she'd been planning this long before the Black Card test. Adrian looked up. This started before you ever walked into that boardroom. Elena ran her fingers along the edge of the table. She was just waiting for a good moment. She knew I was watching you. That made Elena pause. Adrian added, You didn't know it, but you'd already passed the real test before I ever gave you that card. A flush rose in her cheeks. She turned back to the papers. What happens now? She asked. She'll resign, Adrian said, or she'll be removed. And me? He looked at her. You'll do what you've always done. Show up, stay steady, lead. Near the end of the day, Elena stopped by the records archive in the lower level, hoping to find older vendor policy memos that might further support the case. The room was cool and dim, the lights on a motion sensor delay. She wandered between aisles of quiet, forgotten folders. As she turned the corner, she heard someone whisper. She stopped, pressed her back to the metal filing shelf. 2 voices, soft, urgent. One was male, the other unmistakably familiar. Lillian. He doesn't have proof it was me, Lillian hissed. He's bluffing. Are you sure? The man asked nervously. That HR woman? She's just trying to look useful. They have nothing that can be tied directly to me unless someone talks. A pause. Have you? She snapped. No, I didn't say anything, I swear. Good, keep it that way, because if I go down, I'm not going alone. Elena's breath caught. She stepped back, silent as possible, and slipped out of the aisle. The elevator couldn't come fast enough. Back upstairs, she found Adrian still in his office. He looked up the moment she entered. I just heard her, Elena said breathlessly. Downstairs, she was threatening someone. She thinks you're bluffing. Adrian stood. Then she's about to learn I don't bluff. He grabbed his phone and called Marissa. Send security to the records archive, he said, right now, and get the legal team on standby. He hung up and looked at Elena, something fiery flickering in his usually calm eyes. You shouldn't have been down there alone, he said. I didn't expect her to be there. He took a step closer, lowering his voice. If anything happened to you... The sentence hung in the air, unfinished, but loaded with meaning. They were standing too close now. The office suddenly felt too small. Just then, the door opened. Marissa stood there, pale, holding her phone. We have a problem, she said. Lillian just left the building. She walked right past security and got into a car. Adrian's voice was low and firm. Track it. Marissa nodded and stepped back out. Elena looked up at him, and for the first time, she asked out loud what had been circling in her heart for days. What happens if she doesn't come back? The car's plates were covered. That was the first thing Marissa noticed when she checked the building's security footage. The black sedan that picked up Lillian Hart at 5:07 p.m. was sleek, discreet, and registered to a holding company that didn't exist 2 days ago. She planned this, Adrian said, watching the grainy playback from his office. She knew it was closing in. Elena stood at his side, arms folded tightly across her chest. What does someone like her even do when she runs? Hide? Start over somewhere? Adrian's voice was clipped. People like Lillian don't run. They reposition. The footage ended. The screen went dark. For the first time since the whole ordeal began, Elena felt something close to fear. Not for her job, not for her reputation, but for the idea that someone so ruthless might simply disappear without consequences. Adrian saw it on her face, on her. She won't get away with this, he said quietly. I know, Elena replied. I've spent so long being small in this world, I forgot what it feels like to be seen. He turned to her. You were never small. You were just surrounded by people who wanted you to believe that. That night, Elena returned home to find her mother waiting in the kitchen, wearing her old terry cloth robe and holding a steaming cup of peppermint tea. You're late, her mother said softly. I know. Hard day? Elena gave a small smile, the kind that makes you question everything and somehow believe more at the same time. She dropped her bag on the counter and sat across from her. Her mother studied her for a moment. Something's changed. What do you mean? You look different. Not in your face, Mayan, in your posture. Like you stopped apologizing to the air around you. Elena laughed quietly, tears prickling behind her eyes. I think someone finally believed in me. Her mother reached over and took her hand. I've always believed in you, but sometimes it takes someone outside the frame to help you see your own picture. That night, Elena placed the velveteen rabbit on her nightstand again. She didn't open it, just rested her fingers on the cover and whispered, You were right, Nana. Being real hurts sometimes, but it's worth it. The next morning, the city was unusually quiet. It was the kind of golden fall day that made people slow down, if only for a moment. But in the Cross International building, the mood was shifting, subtle but tangible. People held the elevator doors for each other, said good morning with eye contact instead of half smiles. And Adrian Cross was already waiting when Elena walked in. You're early, she said, surprised. I had some thinking to do. He was holding a navy blue envelope. What's that? He handed it to her. Open it. Inside was an invitation, understated, elegant, and handwritten, a private charity gala, hosted by the Cross Foundation. Black tie, Saturday evening. Elena's name printed neatly beneath the RSVP. She looked up. You're inviting me? I'm asking you, he said. Not as your boss, not as a statement to the board, just me, asking you. Elena blinked. I don't even own a dress that fits black tie. I already guessed that, he said, reaching into his drawer and pulling out a small black gift card. This is for you. No strings, no tests. She took it hesitantly. "You really are trying to surprise me again." "I just want you in the room," he said, "because it's time they see what I see." Later that afternoon, Elena stepped out for lunch alone, something she rarely did. She walked past the rush of food trucks and noisy cafes until she found a quiet sandwich shop tucked between a dry cleaner and a flower stand. She ordered a grilled cheese and tomato soup and sat in the window, letting herself breathe. That's when she saw her, Lillian, across the street, dressed in a simple tan coat. No pearls, no red lipstick, just ordinary. She was standing with a man Elena didn't recognize, older corporate posture, speaking with restrained anger. Elena froze. Lillian turned for a moment. Their eyes met, just for a second. But it was enough. Lillian said nothing, just turned back to the man and walked briskly down the street. Elena's soup had gone cold by the time she stood up. Back at the office, Adrian was on a call with the legal team when Elena returned. She waited until he finished before stepping in. "I saw her." Adrian blinked. "Lillian?" She nodded. "She's still in the city." He exhaled slowly. "Then we still have a chance?" Elena sat down. "Why do you care so much?" He didn't answer right away. Then, "Because you were right. Power without accountability becomes a mirror, and too many people around here have only been staring at themselves." There was something else in his voice, something older, regret maybe, or guilt. She tilted her head. "Has someone done this to you before?" He looked up. "Yes," he said, "but I let them. I thought if I stayed cold enough, I wouldn't feel it." She leaned forward slightly. "Do you feel it now?" He met her gaze, and this time, he didn't look away. Every second. At 6:18 p.m., Marissa from HR called. From HR. "I thought you should know," she said carefully. Lillian's credit card pinged. She purchased a one-way ticket to Switzerland. Flight departs Saturday morning. We're coordinating with legal now. By nightfall, it was clear she hadn't boarded, because she walked straight into the gala. Adrian hung up and stood. But Elena already had her coat in hand. "You want to stop her," she said. He nodded. "So do I." He opened the door for her, and just before they stepped out, she paused, eyes searching his. "This time," she said softly, "let's not let her slip through the cracks." Elena had never been in a room like this before. Marble floors, chandeliers the size of cars, the soft clinking of champagne flutes, and 100 conversations humming just below a string quartet. The Cross Foundation's annual Autumn Gala was more than just a fundraiser. It was a stage for power, for performance, for names, and she wasn't supposed to be on it. At least, not according to the way people looked at her as she stepped through the grand glass doors. Her dress was navy, deep, clean, simple, the color of quiet confidence, not flashy, not branded, but fitted just right, with soft fabric that skimmed her body like it belonged there. She wore her hair down for once, a small silver pin tucked behind one ear, and around her finger still was the old family ring. She didn't walk in with Adrian. That had been her request. He had nodded once, with respect, and entered separately about 10 minutes earlier. Now, across the ballroom, she spotted him, in a sharp black tuxedo, standing near a group of donors and laughing at something, not forced, not fake. But as soon as he caught her eye, his expression changed. Just a little, like someone remembering something real in the middle of a dream. He excused himself and crossed the room. "You came," he said, as if he still wasn't sure she would. "I almost didn't," Elena admitted. "I stopped 3 times between the curb and the door." "Why?" "Because this room wasn't made for people like me." Adrian's gaze softened. "Maybe it wasn't, but you make it better just by standing in it." They stood near the back of the ballroom beside a table of miniature quiches and tiny desserts that looked too pretty to eat. You're the only person I know who can look like royalty while holding a napkin full of smoked almonds," he murmured. She gave him a sideways look. "Don't make me laugh. These people might hear and revoke my napkin privileges." He chuckled. Across the room, a woman in diamonds nudged her date and pointed toward Elena. Adrian followed her gaze, then leaned slightly closer. "You're being watched," he said. "Story of my week." "They're wondering who you are?" "I'm wondering that too some days." Adrian looked at her carefully. "Well, they're about to find out." 30 minutes into the evening, Adrian was called to the stage to make the welcome speech. Elena stepped to the side of the ballroom near a marble column, out of the spotlight but close enough to see him clearly. He thanked donors, honored the staff, spoke of the foundation's efforts in childhood literacy, and then, unexpectedly, paused. "I'd also like to take a moment," he said, "to acknowledge someone who, in a very short time, reminded me what leadership should actually look like." There were murmurs. He glanced toward the edge of the ballroom, directly at her. "She's not a CEO, she's not a board member, but she is, without a doubt, the most grounded, thoughtful, quietly courageous person I've had the privilege to work beside." Elena's throat tightened. "She doesn't know I'm saying this," he added, "and I'll probably pay for it on Monday. But Elena Morgan, thank you for keeping this company, and some of us, honest." The crowd turned. Some applauded. A few smiled. One or two frowned. But in that moment, Elena didn't care. She just bowed her head slightly and let herself feel it. She wasn't invisible anymore. After the speech, Adrian found her near the back terrace, where the music was softer and the air cooler. "You didn't have to do that," she said. "I know. But you did." He looked at her. "Because I meant it." For a while they stood in the quiet, the city lights blinking beyond the terrace like soft promises. "You know what's strange," she said after a while. "What?" "I think I feel safer with you here than I ever did in rooms full of people pretending to protect me." He didn't speak right away. Then, softly, "That's not strange at all." Dinner was served in courses, but Elena barely touched hers. The table was full of investors, board members, and two over-perfumed women who spent 10 minutes discussing yacht paint. Adrian sat beside her, but didn't pull her into the conversation. Instead, he leaned close between courses and whispered things like, "Bet you $5 that guy's watch is fake," and "That salmon wants to go home." And once, during dessert, "Still want to disappear?" Elena glanced around, then smiled. "No," she said, "I want to stay." But the night wasn't finished. As guests began migrating toward the jazz trio near the bar, a commotion stirred at the entrance. A woman in a red dress stepped through the doors, hair down, eyes blazing. Lillian Hart. The murmurs began immediately. She walked slowly, deliberately, ignoring the stares. And when she reached the edge of the ballroom, she scanned the crowd until she found them. Adrian, Elena. Her smile was small, too small. She didn't approach right away, she simply stood there, watching. "I thought she left the country," Elena whispered. "So did I." Lillian's eyes didn't waver. She lifted her chin and walked straight toward them. Lillian Hart moved like she owned the marble beneath her heels. Her red gown was sharp, commanding, and calculated to draw attention, a queen arriving uninvited to a kingdom she once ruled. Guests paused mid-sip. A man in a tuxedo whispered, "Isn't she—" and his date nodded tightly. At the far end of the ballroom, Adrian's expression darkened. He stood straighter. Elena remained seated beside him, her fingers curled around the base of her water glass. "She shouldn't be here," he said. "Here." His voice low. "No," Elena replied, "but she is." Lillian reached them in under a minute. She didn't acknowledge Adrian. Her eyes were fixed only on Elena. "Well," she said with that same slow smile she used in the boardroom, the one that tried to dress up venom in velvet. "Congratulations." Elena met her gaze. Calm, unmoving. "Thank you," she said. Lillian tilted her head. "You've certainly made yourself at home, Executive title, corner office, black tie evenings, very Cinderella. Except I brought my own shoes, Elena said softly. And I didn't need a fairy godmother, just facts. A murmur passed through a nearby table. Adrian was silent beside her, not out of hesitation, but restraint. This wasn't his moment. It was Elena's. Lillian's smile twitched. You always did play innocent well, she said. That quiet, sweet thing you do. You made everyone underestimate you. Elena didn't blink, including you. Oh, I never underestimated you, Lillian said, her voice cool. I just knew you didn't have the spine to survive this world without hiding behind someone bigger. Elena stood up slowly, not to threaten, just to meet her eye to eye. I survived it, she said, voice steady, without cheating, without stealing, without dragging anyone under me to stay afloat. Lillian's jaw clenched. Elena continued, you thought if you framed me, I'd vanish quietly, like background noise. But the thing about background noise is, if you listen close enough, it tells you what's really going on. Around them, the silence had changed. It wasn't shock anymore. It was recognition. The people watching knew exactly what this was. And who was winning. Lillian's expression tightened. You've made a powerful enemy tonight. I didn't come here to make enemies, Elena replied. But I'm not afraid of the ones who come to me wearing war paint and pearls. Adrian took a small step forward, his hand lightly brushing Elena's back. That's enough, he said to Lillian. You're not invited, and you're not welcome. Lillian turned to him slowly, her voice low enough that only the two of them could hear. You think this ends with a speech and address? No, he said. It ends with consequences, the legal kind. For a moment, Lillian looked tired. She glanced back at Elena, not with hatred, not with fear, with something harder to define. A flicker of regret, perhaps, or a jealousy too deep to name. Then she gave the faintest nod and walked away, not rushed, not shaken, but marked. The gala resumed, but something had shifted. No one asked Elena who she was anymore. They knew, and she didn't need to explain herself to anyone. Not tonight. Later, on the rooftop balcony, where the noise was muffled and the skyline glittered like quiet applause, Elena stood alone for a few moments, breathing it in. Adrian joined her a minute later, handing her a soft linen napkin with a slice of lemon tart. They served it after you stepped out, he said. I figured you earned something sweet. She took it, smiling. Do you always reward personal growth with citrus-based desserts? Only when the personal growth happens in front of 2 hedge fund managers and a former senator. She laughed, really laughed. Then her voice softened. I've never done that before. What? Spoken like that, without apology. He looked at her. You didn't sound like someone who was trying to be brave. You sounded like someone who already was. Elena looked down at the small dessert in her hands. I used to think strength came with loudness, she said. But tonight, I felt it in the silence, in not shrinking. Adrian's gaze didn't leave her. You never had to grow into anything. You were already there. They're the ones who finally caught up. They stood in comfortable quiet for a long moment. Then Elena reached into her small clutch and pulled out something unexpected. The velveteen rabbit. Adrian blinked. You brought it? She nodded. It felt right. He looked down at the book, then back at her. Still need it? Elena traced the edge of the cover with one finger. Maybe not, but I wanted it with me. Then, without quite meaning to, she looked up and asked, Can I trust you? Adrian? He didn't smile, didn't soften. He simply said, Yes. And for the first time since her promotion, she believed it. But the next morning, when Elena walked into the office, the trust she'd started to build cracked just a little, because waiting in her inbox was a single message. Subject: Legal Inquiry Update, Lillian Hart. And in the preview line, before she even clicked it open, 5 words blinked like a warning. She's filed a countersuit. The walls felt thinner, Maybe it was the echo of the public statement. Maybe it was the knowledge that their private lives were now tangled in court filings and subpoena requests. But as Adrian paced his office, jaw tight, sleeves rolled up, Elena sat at the edge of the leather sofa, feeling like a stranger in her own skin. "She subpoenaed my personal emails," he repeated, as if saying it aloud would somehow shrink the implications. "She's trying to prove we're involved," Elena added. Her voice was even, but her heart wasn't. Adrian turned toward her. "If the board believes there was any inappropriate influence, they'll use it to discredit everything," she finished. "Not just me, the evidence, the promotion, all of it." He rubbed the back of his neck. "I'll speak to legal. We'll separate our records, timeline it, draw a clear line between the personal and professional." She nodded but didn't say anything for a moment. Then, "Adrian, is there a line?" He looked at her, and for the first time, he didn't try to lead with strategy. There was no plan in his expression. Just truth. "Not anymore," he said. Later that afternoon, she escaped to the rooftop garden, a quiet, underused space where employees occasionally went to breathe, or pretend the city didn't press in on all sides. Elena sat on a stone bench with a paper bag in her lap. Inside was a turkey sandwich, half a banana, and a bottle of water she'd barely touched. She wasn't hungry. She just needed something to do with her hands. The velveteen rabbit was tucked beside her in her tote, like it had followed her, silently insisting it still had something to offer. She pulled it out and flipped it open. The spine creaked faintly. The pages still smelled like dust and paper and love. She turned to the page with the inscription again. "To the one who made me real. Love, Nana." Her throat tightened. How strange that she hadn't read it in years. And yet in the middle of all this mess, it had found its way back. Not just the book, the meaning. Being real meant being seen, and being seen meant being vulnerable. Maybe that's what Lillian had always hated, that Elena never needed to play dress-up to belong. She just was. Even now, facing legal attacks and rumors, Elena wasn't hiding. She felt tired, yes. Exposed, absolutely. But small? No, not anymore. "Thought I'd find you up here," Adrian's voice said behind her. She didn't turn right away. "I didn't know I had a pattern." "You do," he said, sitting beside her. "When things get loud, you look for sky." She looked over at him then. His tie was loose. There was a tiny crease in the corner of his shirt collar, something she'd never seen before. It made him look human, tired, beautiful in that strange way truth makes people shine. "I don't like feeling like someone's secret," she said softly. "You're not." "Then what am I?" He turned to face her fully. "You're the person I think about when the room is too quiet, when it's too loud, when something good happens, and I want to share it, when something bad happens and I need someone steady." Elena blinked. "I don't want to be your escape," she whispered. "You're not," he said. "You're my home." The wind brushed her hair gently across her cheek. He reached up and tucked it behind her ear. Not possessively, not dramatically, just carefully, with reverence. The city pulsed below them, but they were still. When they came back inside, everything changed. Marissa was waiting outside Adrian's office. "We have a problem," she said. "Lillian's legal team just filed a motion to expedite discovery. They're pushing to make your private correspondence public by Monday." "That's in 4 days," Adrian said, jaw tensing. Marissa nodded. "And that's not all. An anonymous leak has already reached a reporter at the Midtown Ledger. They're running a feature, calling it a scandal. Elena's name is in the title." Elena closed her eyes for half a second. "Let them run it," she said quietly. Marissa's head tilted. "You're sure?" Elena looked at Adrian, then back at Marissa. "They can write what they want, but truth doesn't need editing." The article dropped at 6:02 p.m. It was everywhere by 7 high. The CEO and the assistant, inside, the quiet rise of Elena Morgan. There were photos, blurry shots from the gala, a still from the press conference, a close-up of her in a cardigan from months ago, head down, holding a coffee tray. There were quotes, anonymous ones, some kind, some cruel. There was one line that made her pause. She's not flashy, she's not loud, but she has something none of them have. You trust her before she even speaks. She didn't know who had said it, but it held her still. Adrian came to her apartment that night, not with flowers, not with explanations, with soup from the deli 2 blocks down, chicken and rice in a plastic container with a dented lid. They ate in silence at her kitchen table while her mother watched from the living room, pretending to be absorbed in a mystery novel. "She's listening to every word we say," Elena whispered. "I know," Adrian whispered back. She smiled. Halfway through the meal, her mother cleared her throat. "I just want to say one thing," she called from behind the novel. They both turned. "I don't know where this is going," she said, peeking over the book. "But if you hurt her, Adrian, I will sue you in 3 languages." Adrian swallowed, understood. Then, after a moment, "Would it help if I washed the dishes?" Her mother smiled. "Maybe." At the end of the night, after the dishes and the quiet goodbye, Adrian paused at the door. "If this gets worse before it gets better," he said, "you don't have to stay in the middle of it." Elena stepped closer. "I'm not afraid of the storm," she said. "I've just never had someone walk through it with me." And before either of them could ruin the moment with too many words, she leaned in and kissed him. Soft, certain, not to prove anything, just to mark what was real. The next morning, the building's security footage revealed something new. A visitor had entered Lillian's old office suite during the night. Keycard access, time stamped. And the person was not Lillian. The footage was grainy, but the shape was unmistakable. A man, tall, tense, had entered Lillian's former office suite just after midnight. Security logs confirmed his identity. Ethan Vale, one of Lillian's former consultants. Quiet, forgettable, until now. Elena stared at the screen. "What was he doing in there?" she asked. Adrian stood beside her, arms folded. "Looking for something, or trying to remove something." "Evidence?" Adrian nodded. "Maybe documents, maybe a device. We won't know until security pulls the access logs and sweeps the office." "But why now?" "Because the case is unraveling and someone's scared of what's still hidden." Elena leaned in, eyes scanning every shadow on the footage. Ethan moved quickly, methodically, as if he knew where to look. And then, just before leaving, he paused, looked directly at the security camera, not in surprise, in defiance. Adrian's voice was quiet. He wasn't hiding, he was sending a message. The legal team worked through the weekend. By Monday morning, the discovery process had flipped. The files recovered from Ethan's late-night visit revealed encrypted emails between him and Lillian, communications confirming everything: the vendor fraud, the forged approval logs, and the plan to discredit Elena before she was ever promoted. And beneath it all, one personal message from Lillian herself. "She thinks being good makes her safe, but real power doesn't care about good." The sentence turned Elena's stomach, not from fear, but from clarity. Lillian never understood that being good wasn't weakness. It was Elena's anchor. That's why she'd survived, and that's why Lillian wouldn't. The company released an official statement on Tuesday. It was clear, decisive, unapologetic. Lillian Hart's countersuit had been dismissed. Ethan Vale had been terminated and placed under investigation. Elena Morgan had been publicly exonerated. No NDAs, no buried truths. Adrian stood at the center of it, but Elena was the headline. Her story wasn't about scandal. It was about resilience. The morning after the verdict, Elena took the long way to work. She stopped at the corner bookstore that had replaced her grandmother's original shop. It was smaller, more modern, but the scent of paper and ink still welcomed her like memory. She browsed quietly, trailing her fingers along the shelves. At the counter, the clerk smiled. Looking for anything in particular? Elena reached into her bag and placed her copy of The Velveteen Rabbit on the counter. I wanted to return this to someone, she said. But I think I finally realized maybe it was always meant for me. The clerk, confused but kind, nodded anyway. She bought a new paperback copy at the counter, tucked a small handwritten note inside, "To the one who still believes being real is enough. E.M." Then she left that copy on the give one. Take one shelf. Her vintage copy, the one that had carried her through every storm, stayed with her where it belonged. At the office there was no fanfare, no welcome back balloons, just quiet nods of respect, a few heartfelt smiles, and one small post-it on her desk, written in Adrian's familiar handwriting. "You're not behind me now, you're beside me. A.C." That evening, as the skyline faded into lavender and gold, Adrian knocked on her office door. "Dinner?" he asked. She smiled. "Paper plates or reservations?" He held up a bag. "Falafel, still warm." They sat together on the conference room floor, barefoot, plates on their laps, laughing about how the CEO of a billion-dollar company still managed to spill tahini on his tie. It wasn't about the food, it was the normal of it, the peace, the after. Elena looked over at him, quiet for a long moment. "You're not what I expected," she said. Adrian raised an eyebrow. "Dangerous words?" She laughed. "I don't mean it like that." "Then how?" "I think I expected the man who gave me a black card to test me, to always be testing people." Adrian's smile faded gently into something more serious. "I was," he admitted, "until you showed me I didn't need to." They didn't need to define what they were that night. It was already clear. They had become each other's home, not through grand gestures but shared spaces, honesty, and standing through storms side by side. There was no fairy tale kiss at midnight, no sudden spark, just warmth, and a love built not on fantasy, but on reality, the kind that stays, the kind that holds, the kind that chooses you even when the world doesn't. 3 weeks later, a board member asked Elena if she'd ever consider being part of the executive development program. "You mean management?" she asked, raising an eyebrow. "We mean leadership," the woman clarified. Elena paused, then smiled. Maybe someday. She didn't need the corner office, not now, maybe not ever, because she'd already proven everything that mattered. The final line of The Velveteen Rabbit floated back to her one morning as she walked into the building. Once you are real, you can't be ugly except to people who don't understand. And at last, Elena Morgan no longer needed anyone to understand. She was real, she was seen, she was loved. Would you forgive someone like Lillian? Would you walk away or stand and rise like Elena did? Tell me in the comments. I'd love to hear what you would do. And if this story touched you, you know what to do. Like, share, and subscribe for more stories that stay with you, even after they end. And rate this story from Leo to 10 in the comments. I'd love to know how it made you feel. You matter, your voice matters, and your presence here means more than you know. Thanks for watching. See you in the next story.